قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, Al-Qadim, the eternal, that means the beginningless one, the uncreated one, the one whose existence preceded any other existence. SharH, the explanation, أن هذا تصريح بما علم التزاما. The explanation is that this is explicitly saying something that's known by necessity, yani something that's a necessary conclusion. Something that's a necessary conclusion. Yani, this is saying outwardly and explicitly, being blatant or straightforward about something that would be true even without saying it. لأن واجب الوجود لا يكون إلا قديما, because the necessary that's where someone got that from there. لأن واجب الوجود, so someone might translate that as the necessary existence. It means, though, doesn't mean Allah is an existence necessary. He is the necessarily existent one. الواجب الوجود, يعني واجب الوجود أي الوجود الواجب, the necessary existence, meaning the attribute of the existent one. Al-Wujud, that's the attribute of Allah Ta'ala. He is wajibul wujud. That means necessarily existent. So the one who has the attribute we're discussing, he is existent. And the attribute is existence. So we can say, because the necessary existence, we mean the attribute of Allah, if we say it that way. But we don't want to refer to Allah with words that mean He's an attribute. We don't want to call Him an attribute. So what we're saying here is the one who has this attribute. لأن واجب الوجود, لأن, because the necessary existence, which is the existence of God, لا يكون إلا قديما, it would not be but eternal, beginningless. أي لا ابتداء لوجوده, meaning there is no beginning for his existence. إذ لو كان حادثا مسبوقا بالعدم لكان وجوده بغيره ضرورة. Since had he been an event preceded by nothingness, then his existence would have been by someone else necessarily. حتى وقع في كلام بعضهم أن الواجب والقديم مترادفان. It even came in the talk of some of them that the wajib, the necessary, and the qadim, the eternal, are synonyms. لكنه ليس بمستقيم, but that's not straight. What's that footnote there? حاصله أن يقال إذ لو كان حادثا لاحتاج في وجوده إلى غيره. The synopsis is that it would be said, since had he been an event, he would have needed to exist someone else. فلا يكون واجبا, and then he wouldn't be necessary, يعني the necessary being, a necessary being. لأن الواجب ما يكون وجوده بذاته, because the necessary, meaning the necessary one, is what its existence is by itself. ولا يحتاج إلى شيء أصلا, and does not need anything fundamentally. وإذا لم يكن واجبا كان ممكنا, and if he were not necessary, or if something were not necessary, then it would be merely possible, yani, assuming that it exists. فَيَكُونُ حَادِثًا, and then it would be, therefore, an event, created thing. فَيَحْتَاجُ إِلَى مُحْدِث, and then it would need an event creator. فَالْقِدَمُ لَازِمٌ قَطْعِيٌّ لِلْوَاجِبِ. And so, eternality, beginninglessness, is binding definitively for the necessary one. ظاهر اللزوم, with an obvious bindingness, جدا, very obvious, بحيث قد يظن في لفظي الواجب والقديم أن مفهومهما واحد. They are so connected, these two meanings are so connected that it might be thought, قد يظن, it might be thought that the two expressions, al-wajib, the necessary, and al-qadim, the eternal, what's understood from the both of them is the same thing. And Shaykh is saying, but that's not really the case though. What's understood from them is not the same thing. They are binding though. That's very important there, detail. What that means is, be meticulous. Realize the fine difference here. Comb through these meanings with a fine-tooth comb. So the Shaykh says, حتى وقع في كلام بعضهم. It even happened in the talk of some of them that al-wajib and al-qadim are synonymous. Al-wajib being the necessary one, and al-qadim meaning the beginningless one. But really, each one has its own mafhum. Each one has its own meaning, its own denotation, even what it denotes, meaning the real meaning of it. Its actual meaning. Each one has its own denotation. Wajib means must exist. Not possible nor impossible. So that's one meaning. Qadim here means without beginning. So that's not exactly 100% the same thing. Shaykh says, some thought that these are synonymous. لَكِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بِمُسْتَقِيمٍ. But that's not straight. Then he has another footnote here. لأن مفهوم الواجب أن يكون وجوده لذاته. Because what's understood from, yani the denotation of al-wajib, the necessary one, is that his existence is by itself. ومفهوم القديم, and the denotation of eternal, هو ألا يكون لوجوده بداية. It's that there would not be for its existence or his existence a beginning. فظاهر ألا ترادف بينهما. So it is obvious. ظاهر, it's obvious, it's clear, it's apparent that they are not truly synonymous. They don't have the same meaning, but they are linked though. Binding, they're together, but they don't mean the same thing. فإن قيل, now if it were said, إن القديم لم يثبت أنه اسم لله تعالى قرآنا ولا حديثا. Indeed, Al-Qadim, the eternal, is not confirmed as a name of God, exalted is he, from any Quran nor any hadith. وإن ورد في بعض الروايات ذكره في تعداد أسماء الله بإسناد ضعيف. Even though it did come in some narrations of the listing of the names of Allah Ta'ala, it did come mentioned in the listing, in some listings that were narrated about the names of Allah, but with a weak chain of narration. So weak chain of narration, we're not going to use it as evidence in Aqidah. فَيُقَال, Shaykh says, but it would be said, إنه يكتفى لجواز وصف الله به بورود معناه في النص القرآني. What suffices for the permission, the permissibility, the validity of describing God with this name, Al-Qadim, is its meaning coming in Quranic text. The Quranic text, قال الله تعالى, God Almighty said, هو الأول, He is the first. First here means no one existed before Him. No one existed before Him. Doesn't mean, first doesn't mean came into existence first. So someone might say, don't translate it as first because this means He's created. It doesn't have to mean that. You don't have to translate it as first. You can just say al-awwal and then say it means the one who has no beginning. You can do that. But if someone said the first it means the first, which means he has no beginning, doesn't mean necessarily that means he's created. It means because first means the one that there wasn't someone before him. That's the meaning of first. The one that there wasn't someone before him. That's the meaning of first. So then this meaning works. So I'm going to translate it like that for our translation's sake. Huwa al-awwal, He is the first. That's the third ayah of Surah Al-Hadid. Didn't you realize, brothers and sisters, from those names of Allah and attributes of Allah, those ones that their wording could be used for the creation and also could be used for Allah. Didn't you notice how the scholars maintained an amount of its linguistic meaning while negating any createdness from that? So that's how that goes. Those words, like you say for the creation, for example, wise. He's wise. And you say, what does that mean? So some scholars said, this means He can look ahead and estimate and be right. So they said, this is the wisdom. Okay, so that means that His plans work. That's the meaning. The meaning is if He's going to look ahead and estimate and He's right, that means He makes a plan and He gets what He was looking for. So that's for creation. So what's mean for Allah Ta'ala? It means that whatever He willed to be shall be, actually. And whatever came out the way it was supposed to. Or I'll give you another example. Kalam, speech. Some people don't want to use the word speech. I say there's no problem with this word. Allah knows best. Because to them, speech means letters and sounds, so they don't want to use that. But speech doesn't mean letters and sounds only. That's created. But speech means, like the scholar said, what makes you understand. So then you take that abstract meaning and remove any createdness out of it, then means the word carries the meaning we need. Allah has a speech, an uncreated speech. And there's a lot of words like that. And I'm digressing a little bit here. This is why you don't want to rush to deem a person as a kafir in some cases. Like someone might say, Allah is the best of planners. I don't know why they say that. To be honest with you, I don't know what word they took that from in Arabic. I don't say it. I wouldn't encourage anyone to say it. Well, someone might say, this word, this is impossible to use this word because this means this is some mental process. And we can't say that about Allah. But what somebody might think this means, because what somebody's really saying is, well, a plan is like the way you want something to go. And so if we say Allah is a planner, means that He made everything the way it is. Everything came out. This is His plan. In eternity, it's the way He made it be. I'm not saying you can use that word. I'm trying to make you understand, though, how a word can be stripped sometimes of created meaning and still stand. That's how you're going to explain knowledge and power and will. And then that's how you're going to talk to a Wahhabi too. And when he says, has hand, not like the hand of creation. So you say to him, what does that mean? He has no reasonable answer here. Because there's no way for him to strip the created meaning out of it. He's going to say, we don't know what it means. Then you're going to say, why you translate it then? Or he's going to say it means as stated. You're going to say that's a concrete noun. So that's an object. So that's impossible. So that's all you have there. So and he wants to say it doesn't mean power. Isn't that what do I have? Yeah. He's going to say it doesn't mean power. It doesn't mean something else. So he's not stripping it of created meaning. So let me get back on track here. So قال الله تعالى هو الأول. Allah Ta'ala said هو الأول. He is Al-Awwal, the first. That means the one that there was nothing before him. So that works. That doesn't mean he's created. Just like if one were to say, he is the last, that doesn't mean his existence comes to an end. That means he's the one that there's no one after him. So that doesn't have a created meaning in it. وَكَذَلِكَ الْأَزَلِي. And likewise, Al-Azali, the eternal. Lam yarid isman lillahi ta'ala. It didn't come as a name of God. Exalted is He. لكنه مرادف للأول. But it is synonymous to Al-Awwal, the first. Which would mean here, the one who there's no one existing before him. And let me repeat myself, because sometimes some things will slip them. You don't have to translate this word as the first if you don't want to. If someone just wants to say Al-Awwal means he exists without a beginning, that's absolutely fine. But what I am saying is, when someone argue with you and tell you, that word doesn't work at all. Slow down. I'd say, slow down. And don't forget also, sometimes there are words that their meanings are correct, but just the wording, you can't use it. Like, we don't say Allah is Al-Mustati'. That would mean the one who's able, which would mean the one who has power. So we don't say Mustati', even though the meaning is valid, the meaning itself. So that's why sometimes a word, it works. You might, sometimes the meaning works, the meaning. Not that you can use it or that you have to use it. Now I'm talking about translation. So, وَكَذَلِكَ الْأَزَلِي لَمْ يُرِدْ اسْمًا لِلَّهِ تَعَالَى. And likewise, Al-Azali, the eternal. It did not come as a name of God. Exalted is He. لَكِنَّهُ مُرَادِفٌ لِلْأَوَّلِ. However, it is a synonym for Al-Awwal, the first. Al-Waridi isman lillahi ta'ala. The one that did come as a name of Allah. This Al-Awwal, it did come in the Quran and in the Hadith as a name of Allah. It's confirmed for sure. And this word, this name, Al-Azali, it did not come in the Revelation. And this name here, Al-Qadim, it's not confirmed to have come in the Revelation. It came in some weak reports, so it's not confirmed as having come in the Revelation. But the scholars permitted both of these, Qadim and Azali. وَأَجْمَعَتِ الْأُمَّةُ عَلَى جَوَازِ إِطْلَاقِهِمَا عَلَى اللَّهِ. And the nation has agreed to the permissibility of using both of those words for Allah. Al-Qadim and Al-Azali. So they do have a religious proof, which is the ijma'. And ijma' is going to be based on what? An ayah or a hadith. Shaykh gave us the ayah. Huwa al-awwal. And then there's also some other proofs too. Shaykh didn't mention here, such as Allahumma dha sultani al-azim wal manni al-qadim. Oh Allah, dha sultani al-azim, the one who's attributed with the great dominion, wal manni al-qadim, and the eternal grace, the grace, the generosity that is qadim. So the attribute was described as qadim. That's confirmed. So they said, if his attribute is qadim, that's because he is qadim. So they said, you can use this name for Allah. It's an adjective. فَلَا وَجْهَ لِلْإِعْتِرَاضِ فِي ذَلِكَ. So there is no way to object to that. Yani, let a person direct his efforts elsewhere. Not here, not in trying to debunk Al-Azali and Al-Qadim. This is not a beneficial effort. وَمَعْنَى الْقِدَمِ الْمُرَادِ فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ. And the meaning of Al-Qidam that's meant in this subject, هو القدم الذاتي. It is the self-eternality. ليس القدم الزماني, not temporal ancientness. It's not ancientness that's meant by qidam, because that is one of the meanings of qidam, ancientness. So here, Al-Qidam means in language a prior existence. So that's why it has the meaning of Al-Awwal. Al-Qidam is a prior existence. Al-Qidam is an existence before another existence without a gap in between them. So if that's for Allah, then it's going to mean he has no beginning. If that's for creation, it's going to have a beginning. So Al-Awwal for Allah means like that also. Al-Awwal, the first, means the one that no one existed before him. And in fact, he has no beginning for his existence. That's why no one existed before him. But for the creation, the qidam is going to be oldness. So, لَيْسَ الْقِدَمَ الزَّمَانِي. For God, this qidam is not a temporal ancientness or oldness. كَمَا ذَهَبَتْ إِلَيْهِ الْفَلَاسِفَةِ. As the philosophers have gone to. Yani, which is the position to which the philosophers have gone. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, الحي القادر العليم السميع البصير الشائي المريد. The alive or the living, the powerful, the knowing or the knower or the knowledgeable. If you say knowing in this way here, it means an adjective, not a verb. Because you know in English, sometimes the adjective and the verb share the same wording. So it's going to be how you put it in the sentence that makes you know if it's an adjective or a verb. So if we say the knowing, we mean here an adjective. As-Sami' al-Basir, the hearing, the seeing, as adjectives. But that's why I like to translate it as hearer and seer, so that it won't be confused for a verb. And alim, knower, now it's not going to be confused for a verb. Also living, that could be an adjective or a verb. But if you say alive, then that's actually just an adjective now, not a verb. Ash-Sha'i al-Murid. Ash-Sha'i, the willing. And al-Murid means the same, the willing. So that's what's meant here, an adjective, not a verb. And if you say willer, then it's an adjective exclusively. And one might say willful. Allahu a'lam. I would prefer to say willer over willful. الشرح, the explanation. أن الله تبارك وتعالى متصف بالحياة والقدرة والعلم والسمع والبصر والمشيئة وهي الإرادة. Is that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is described, attributed with life and power and knowledge and hearing and sight or seeing. Yani sight and will. Mashi'ah. Yani this, what we're going to say in English as will, has two Arabic words that you could use. Mashi'ah or irada. English has other words that mean will, like volition. I'm not going to use that. And want could mean will, but I'm not going to use that either. So I'm just going to only use the word will. But notice here what Shaykh did. From what the author said here, the author started by giving adjectives for Allah. And so the Shaykh says what this means is that Allah has attributes. And then he gave the attributes, not the adjectives. Because you know already now that what would validate these adjectives is having the attribute. وَهُوَ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى حَيٌّ بِحَيَاةٍ. And he, Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, is alive by a life. حَيٌّ بِحَيَاةٍ حَيٌّ بِحَيَاةٍ أَزَلِيَّةٍ أَبَدِيَّةٍ حَيٌّ بِحَيَاةٍ أَزَلِيَّةٍ أَبَدِيَّةٍ. Alive by an eternal everlasting life, or with an eternal and everlasting life. قادر بقدرة أزلية أبدية. Powerful by or with an eternal everlasting power. وعليم بعلم أزلي أبدي. And knower or knowledgeable by an eternal everlasting knowledge. Though I'll draw your attention to that the word alim is more emphatic than alim. So alim means knower. Alim, knower. Alim is, compared to that, hyperbolic. So I do prefer, even though I'm not constant with it, but I do prefer to translate alim as knowledgeable. Just because I find knowledgeable to be more emphatic than knower. Allah knows best. بِعِلْمٍ أَزَلِيٍّ أَبَدِي. By an eternal everlasting knowledge. وَسَمِيعٌ بِسَمْعٍ أَزَلِيٍّ أَبَدِي. And a hearer by or with an eternal everlasting hearing. وَبَصِيرٌ بِبَصَرٍ. And a seer with or by a sight, a ru'yah, meaning a sight. So here he used a second word. So what's another word in English if I wanted to use a second word that means sight? Vision. Vision means sight. Yani, I'm not accustomed to saying Allah has vision. I'm not used to that, but I don't really find that the meaning doesn't work. I'm just going to say sight though. وَبَصِيرٌ بِبَصَرٍ. Yani, I'm just using these alternative words here so that I can translate for you. وَبَصِيرٌ بِبَصَرٍ. And he's a seer by sight. A ru'ya, meaning vision, yani seeing. ثابتة. A ru'yatin thabitatin lahu fil azal, meaning by a sight confirmed for him in eternity. وَشَاءٍ بِمَشِيئَةٍ أَزَلِيَّةٍ أَبَدِيَّةٍ. And a willer with or by an eternal everlasting will. وَقَدْ وَرَدَ إِطْلَاقُ لَفْظِ الْحَيِّ وَقَدْ وَرَدَ إِطْلَاقُ لَفْظِ الْحَيِّ وَالْقَادِرِ وَالْعَلِيمِ وَالسَّمِيعِ وَالْبَصِيرِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. And using the expression Hayy, Al-Hayy, the living, as an adjective, because it says the anyway. Now it has to be an adjective. The living, and the powerful, and qadir, and al-alim, and as-sami' and al-basir. These Arabic words, which mean the living, the powerful, the knowledgeable, the hearing, the seeing, those Arabic words, they did come in the Quran. وَلَمْ يُرِدْ إِطْلَاقُ لَفْظِ الشَّاءِ وَالْمُرِيدِ عَلَى اللَّهِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَلَا فِي الْحَدِيثِ. And there did not come the usage of the wording ash-sha'i, the willer or willing, or al-murid, the willing or the willer. Yani these adjectives did not come for Allah in the Quran nor in the Hadith. So these are words that the scholars used. لكن اكتفي في إطلاقهما على الله تعالى بورود الفعل. However, what made using these two words for Allah Ta'ala sufficient is that their verbal forms came. كقوله تعالى, like what Allah says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, had your Lord, sha'a, willed. So that's the verb for mashi'ah, will. So the verb came, sha', and this verb, the source of it is mashi'ah, will. So then those knowledgeable, qualified scholars, they said, therefore he is ash-sha'i, the willer, as a description and not as a name. And وَقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, and the saying of God Almighty, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. Indeed, Allah does what He yurid, wills. This is the 14th ayah of Surah Al-Hajj. The previous one is the 118th verse of Surah Hud. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. Indeed, Allah does what yurid, He wills. They said, so yurid, wills. The source of this verb is irada, will. And the adjective that would come from this is murid, willer. So they said, he is described as murid, willer, because he told us yurid, he wills. And he is described as ash-sha'i, the willer, because he told us yasha, he wills. And actually here in Surah Al-Hajj, this ayah, Inna Allaha yaf'alu ma yurid, there's another ayah in the same surah. Allah says, Inna Allaha yaf'alu ma yasha. So in the same surah, both of those came. Ma yurid and ma yasha. فهذه الألفاظ لا تطلق على غير الله تعالى بالمعنى الذي تطلق إذا أريد وصف الله تعالى بمعانيها. So these expressions are not used for other than Allah, exalted is He, with the meaning that is used when, with the meaning that بالمعنى الذي تطلق إذا أريد, with the meaning that they would have when used for describing God. These expressions are not used for other than God with the meaning that they would have when they are used for describing God. Exalted is He. فَلَيْسَ هُنَاكَ إِلَّا الاتفاق في اللفظ. So there's nothing there but agreement in wording, not agreement in meaning. Here's a footnote. في اللفظ يقال. So in wording it is said, Allahu alimun wa alim. Allah is knower and knowledgeable. وَلِلَّذِي من وللذي له علم من الإنسان يقال فلان عالم وعليم. And for the one who has knowledge amongst the humans, it would be said, so and so is a knower or knowledgeable. لكن من حيث المعنى علم الله غير علم المخلوق. But from the perspective of meaning, not wording, the knowledge of God is other than the knowledge of the creation. علم الله ليس له ابتداء. The knowledge of God has no beginning. ولا انتهاء, nor an end. ولا يتجدد, and it does not update. لا يزيد ولا ينقص, it does not increase nor decrease. أما علم الإنسان, as for the knowledge of the human, فحادث, it's an event. يزيد وينقص, it increases and decreases. يتجدد بمرور الزمان, it updates with the passage of time. وينقص بآفات, and it decreases with sicknesses or deficiencies. إما بمرض أو انشغال الذهن بالأمور, either because of sickness, one's knowledge would decrease, or because of the mind being distracted with other things. التي تخص مشيئته, يعني, or because he's distracted with other things. وغير أو غير ذلك, or something else. So it's just the same word, not the same meaning. كذلك قدرة الله, likewise the power of God. لا انقطاع لها, it does not cease, it's not interrupted. Saying it's not interrupted doesn't mean that it's in time. So that's how a person doesn't understand some of those things, especially in translation. Here, when I say, the Shaykh says, لَا انْقِطَاعَ لَهَا, it's not interrupted. So a person who could use some reinforcements in this topic, to him, it comes to his mind, if we said it's not interrupted, so it comes to his mind that it means it's persisting in time. And that's not the meaning. So then, if he doesn't know better, he'll say, don't say it's not interrupted, say it has no end. Because how one thing makes him imagine something. So he thinks that's really what it means. ثابتة أزلية, it's confirmed and eternal, this power. أما قدرة الإنسان فحادثة تتغير. As for the power of the human, it is an event, changing. الإنسان أول ما يولد لا يعلم شيئا. The human, when he is first born, does not know anything. ولا يستطيع المشي, and he is unable to walk. ولا ينطق, and he cannot speak. وليس له معلومات, and he has no information. ثم بعد مدة يصير له معلومات. Then after some time, he will have acquired information. ثم هذه المعلومات قد تذهب. Then this information could go away. إما بسبب الجنون, maybe because of insanity. أو تنقص بنسيان بعضها, or this information could decrease because of forgetting some of it. قدرة الإنسان تزيد وتضعف. The power of the human increases and weakens. أما الله فقدرته لا تتغير. As for God, his power does not change. لا تزيد ولا تنقص قدرته. لا تزيد ولا تنقص. It doesn't increase and it doesn't decrease. قدرته شاملة لكل شيء. His power is inclusive of everything. وعلمه شامل لكل شيء. And his knowledge is inclusive of everything. انتهى. That's the commentary of the explainer himself. The explainer put a footnote, يعني. وكذلك فإن الحياة التي وصف الله بها نفسه حياة أزلية أبدية. And likewise, the life with which Allah described himself is an eternal everlasting life. وَالْحَيَاةُ الَّتِي وَصَفَ بِهَا غَيْرَهُ حَيَاةٌ حَادِثَةٌ. And the life with which he described others is an event, an eventual life. قَابِلَةٌ لِلْفَنَاءِ, accepting of, yani susceptible to annihilation, بعد الوجود, annihilation after existence. لأنها مسبوقة بالعدم, because it is in the first place preceded by nothingness. وكذلك علم غيره, and likewise anyone else's knowledge. وسمعه وبصره ومشيئته وإرادته, and anyone else's hearing and sight and will. فإنها حادثة, all of them are eventual. تقبل العدم, accepting of nothingness. بعد وجودها, after their existence. كما أنها حدثت بعد عدم فلا اشتراك بين الله وبين غيره فيها. They are susceptible to vanishing into nothingness just as they occurred after nothingness. So there is nothing common between God and anyone else concerning the attributes. Okay, we'll stop then here. Allah knows best. Any question?
Do you know, Shaykh, how we explain power without using the word power in the meaning? Can we do the same for like knowledge and life and hearing?
What does that mean? We explain power without using power in meaning. That's not clear for me.
Like we say, for example, the power, or when we say, for example, the will, we say that's the attribute by which God specifies the creation.
Yes.
But when we say knowledge, we say the attribute by which God knows things.
Yes.
Is there a way to explain those attributes like we explain the will, for example?
Which attributes?
Like knowledge and sight and hearing and life.
I didn't see how you found the difference. So we say here, his knowledge is his attribute by which he knows, and his sight is his attribute by which he sees. His hearing is his attribute by which he hears. His life is his attribute by which he lives. His power is his attribute by which he brings the non-existent into existence and renders it non-existent. So it's like you're saying, can we say his power is his attribute by which he powers? So that doesn't seem to flow nicely to me. I don't find it clear or strong.
I'm saying the other way around. You know how we say that for power? Can we explain knowledge without saying the attribute by which he knows, and use wording which doesn't use the word know?
Yes. Because his knowledge is related to inkishaf. Inkishaf means exposure. So it's like saying his knowledge is his attribute by which things are exposed to him. But then you're going to maybe make it difficult for yourself and for who's learning from you if you go this way. So what would probably be a better way is to say it like how we usually say it, and then when someone asks further, then give him alternative word, so that if he's finding trouble, is to understand. Because a lot of times these things are clear. Yeah, it's like your question is, how do we take the circle out of the words here? There's a circle in there, so how do we remove the circle?
Yeah, that is my question.
Yeah. So like that, like what I just told you. But I would advise that probably keep that circle, and for someone who needs other words, then you can tell him something like I just told you. And then if you want, and I did this with someone who was asking me. He had a question similar to yours. I don't know who he was. And he said, there's a circle here. So I told him, there is a circle there. You're right. That's true. But sometimes, yani, the scholars, those scholars who said some definitions like that do have circles in them, and those, they know that, they're aware of that. Yani, those ones are way more brilliant than we are. They are aware of that, and they have a lot of wisdom and experience. And despite that, they did it. So if it's something that they could do, then if they could afford to do it, then we can afford to do it, because yani, I say they knew from their understanding and from their expertise that these words are really, in reality, they are understandable, unless a person just doesn't have even what does knowledge mean in the first place. So that one who doesn't know what knowledge means, he's like the one who doesn't know what green light means. So how often are you going to find that one? Not often. So that's why you can rely on this. And then someone who thinks well, because the question's a fine question. Then someone who thinks well, he says, okay, I find a circle here. Can we take the circle out? Then, yeah, it's possible. If you want to, you can say like such and such. But then ask yourself, why did those experts, big massive mountains, who make me look like a toddler with a pacifier in my mouth, why would they say it? So if they could do it, I can do it. You understand where I'm getting at there? And the example I gave that person was how the scholars define knowledge even for the creation. Some of them said, like, for example, great example, Imam Al-Haramain himself, he's a mujtahid in the madhab. We're talking about someone that is massive, yani, hugely massive. He said, knowledge is knowing the known thing as it is. So someone like him, he knows there's a circle in there. And he offered it to us anyway. That's because he wants to benefit us, because he knows that even though there's a circle in there, we're going to understand something, and it's easy. And then if you want to go more advanced, then you can try to word it in a way that takes the circle out, which is that they said knowledge is realizing something as it is, instead of knowledge is knowing the known. It said knowledge is realizing something. But even if you say inkishaf here for the knowledge, inkishaf also applies to the hearing and the sight. So if you want to change and make it your habit to say another way, say the inkishaf, then someone's going to say to you, how do you differ that from the hearing and the sight? And you're going to find yourself, with birds spinning around your head. Don't forget here that in reality, we don't know the reality of Allah's attributes. Some scholars said that the name Allah is derived from waw, lam, ha, waliha. Waliha means tahayyara, to be confused. They said this is because when one thinks of God, he becomes baffled.
Is that a strong saying?
Say that again, please. Oh, is that a strong saying that the name of Allah comes from waliha? No, that's not the stronger saying. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. You're welcome.